Om nahi gyanena sudrishyam pavitram miha vidyate. Tat svayam yoga samsiddhaha kalainatmani vindati. Om shantihi, shantihi, shantihi. You should know, O seeker, that in all the worlds there is no purifier, such as knowledge. The wise ones realize this in their own minds, in time. Om peace, peace, peace. Om satyena, Om satyena labhyastapassa hesa atma samyagyanena brahmacharyena nityam antaha shadirehi jyotirmayo hi shubraha yam pashanti yatayaha kshinadoshaha. Om shanti shanti shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self, dwelling in all beings and all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity, all of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this practice, then the seer beholds it everywhere, existing in everything, even here in this very body. Om peace, peace, peace. Om sahana, Om sahana vavatu sahanau bhunaktu Sahaviryam karvavahai tejasvi navaditamastu ma vidveshovahai. Om shanti shanti shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And as usual on Sunday, we welcome all of you, both live here at the Hawaii chapter of SRV Ashrams, as well as live streaming from other points in the United States and probably in the world. We also have Sangha members in India and Europe who are probably watching right now at different hours, and sometimes odd hours. You have to catch us here in Hawaii at Pacific Standard Time. But nevertheless, we always appear here speaking about those very principles and axioms which you just heard echoed in those Sanskrit chants we opened with. The principles of Atman, the indivisible self within all beings, birthless, deathless, timeless, spaceless, free of dualities and beyond time and space. And also Brahman, which is its ocean of consciousness that we hear called by various names in different religious traditions, like Allah for the Muslims, or Buddha nature for the Buddhists, Almighty Father in Christendom here in the West. So those are precepts and principles of the Dharma. So we appear here every Sunday speaking on the Dharma, and we try and saturate our minds in the Dharma. There is adharma rampant in the world all the time, in all ages, with all cultures, and seen by all the different saviors and exemplars and seers and avatars, that is, God manifest in human form, throughout these various periods of times adharma is rampant, means unrighteousness and ignorance and worse. Beings can be ignorant of the immortal Dharma, as we've been looking at recently due to Sri Krishna's mention of it in the Gita. That's chapter 12, by the way, it appears. I didn't mention that last week, so if you want to look in chapter 12, there are a set of slokas that contain these 32 points that he's pointing out. So these beings ignorant of the immortal Dharma instead cling to relativity and believe in death and birth and level suffering and misery on others, and do not act up to the divine precepts of this very Atman, which we were just chanting about, this immortal self. Immortal, a word that's in English a little bit questionable, because if you say immortality, then you must once have been mortal. But Vedanta never takes that tact. You see, this Atman within us is always immortal, or eternal might be a better word. The mortality is of the body and of the ego and of things in nature. We were talking about that last week when we quoted that beautiful sloka from the Gita, which says, all action takes place in nature, it doesn't take place in your soul. So that soul, of course, would have to be uppercased, because if you lowercase it, then it could mean mind in Vedanta. And mind is not Atman. It's hard enough sometimes we need to find out that we're not the body. It's one of the initial teachings, and you might say Vedanta 101, or maybe even before Vedanta 101 is Hinduism, or any rudimentary level of religion is talking about that kind of basic teaching. But beyond that, you get these higher strains of truth. You march to the beat of a different drummer, as they say. And that's what India is famous for. India has given us Sanatana Dharma. It's another word for immortal, you might say. Sanatana means eternal. And the eternal Dharma means great darshanas, that means clear paths of seeing, or like yoga, for instance, of Patanjali, and Vedanta of Vedavyas, the father of Vedanta, and Buddhism, Lord Buddha's system, as Samkhya of Lord Kapila, and Tantra, and other religions too that occupy India's shores, like Jainism and Sikhism. And these are all connected in the mind of the seers. They're different ways of saying the same thing about ultimate reality. They're all connected by that one internal agreement that the self is one and indivisible at all times beyond time. If that becomes the underlying premise for everything, then you know you have Dharma well in hand, and you can live almost naturally, simply, without any pretension, and with nothing can harm you. Another beautiful sloka out of the Gita, which we're studying now in these 5 classes, this being the second, is that one who understands this immortal Dharma, Krishna says, is never bothered at the time of creation, and is never dies at the time of destruction. So is unruffled at all times. That's one or two of these, maybe more of these points are about equanimity, or what Krishna calls in the Gita, sthiti pragnasya. It's easy to hear that word and those words, and their ramifications from the lips of an illumined preceptor or a guru, a Dharma teacher, but it's very hard to live up to them when you're sitting in the atmosphere of holy company, which you all are now. We're all in the atmosphere of each other as holy company, but we're also always and at all times in the atmosphere of the Atman. Our mind just falls from it. Well, it's that falling from grace, if you want to call it that, that causes this disbelief and lack of faith and lower runs of thought, all the way down to suffering and misery that Buddha talked about. So if you're unruffled at the time of creation and undisturbed at the time of death, then you know that the Dharma has reached deep places in you, that your mind has become pure mind. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that pure mind is God. And Lord Buddha, some 550 years before Jesus, said Buddha mind, pure mind is Buddha mind. So we need to keep this mind in fine and fettle condition then, and the best way to do that is to dip your mind in Dharma all the time. And some of these immortal precepts are there to allow us to do that. If not just to remind us, then to actually form a practice for us. And we know from last week's class that when we got a start on this chart that we covered at least 6 or 7 of these. We could check them off if I had a marker. I could erase them later. But they're going to come at you not in a certain order like they are in this chart. But we have covered up to this point in the chart on the fourfold presence of the Lord. Remember that Sri Krishna was talking about Adi Daivata, Adi Yagya, Adhyatma, and the Adibhuta. The Adibhuta means primal nature. That is, nature is both, we consider nature just to have form, but they know nature to have come from seeds, seed thoughts, as it were, so that's formless nature. Formless matter, you could call it. Not just on the physical level like science and physics is looking at, like black holes and all of that. Basically that just exists at the level of the Bhuta Kasha, the level of physical things only. But if you go into different levels of particle, like the particles of your ancestors and the particles of your mind and your intellect, your intelligence and so forth, then you'll find that space takes on different dimensions. And you'll have to have other ways of explaining where solid objects come from, just then maybe speculating about them coming out of black holes. You'll have to know that they were actually born of thought. Thought is father to the deed. So this is pointing to a whole cross-section of cosmology that we in the West don't know much about. Christ was trying to teach the fishermen along the river about it. But it's called unmanifested nature. So nature, Adibhuta rather, is my physical body. It's like the Virat form of God. Like all of this is his physical form, and he's walking around, you see it, as all beings, and appearing as nature, and soul, and so forth. Soul as the ego, that is, soul as the mind-ego complex, lowercase soul. So he talked about that as a quick review, and then that was one of the fourfold presences of God. You can see how in India they think about God as being all-pervasive. It's everywhere, in everything, at all times. And one of the best English words would be all-pervasive, because that would prove that it doesn't move. It doesn't have to move because it's already there, faster than the mind can think about here and there. There's no way you could outstrip it. In fact, that's one of the slokas in the Upanishads. It outstrips all that runs. So anything that moves, moving from somewhere to somewhere else, location-wise in space, and taking time to do so, is outstripped by this all-pervasive presence of Brahman. And that same Brahman as a drop is in you, as Atman. So it just has taken these coverings and put it over it. Body's one of them, life force is another, mind is another, intellect is another, and ego is a fifth. So there's like 5 coverings over the Atman. It doesn't change the Atman any. You can't change the eternal. See? It's not only a tiger's stripes you can't change. You can't change the Atman even more. So we hold on to that major precept, the birthlessness and deathlessness of the soul, and its non-transformational nature. Those are 2 pillars of Indian philosophical thinking. I'll say it again. Its birthless and deathless nature means changeless and beyond cycles. And its non-transformational nature, Everything else transforms, not that. Changeless, immutable, other words you can try and borrow. So those are axioms to meditate on in your own deep contemplations. So you just think about that, and you find it much, much more amazing and impressive than nature, the outer show of nature, which gets tiring after a few lifetimes. There are souls that actually been there, done that, kind of. You see, they see nature, they see the ancestors and humans coming and changing places, maybe for thousands of years, and yawn, you see. And Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, I have nothing more to gain by coming into the body, into these worlds. Arjuna. He's talking to his beloved disciple, Arjuna. I only come back for the highest good of all beings. Loka sangraha. Loka, all the world, sangraha, this highest intention of the Lord when he or she embodies into a form. Many of the avatars, of course, are male, but they all come from the Divine Mother of the universe, see. So don't get confused. There have been many great women rishis in India. Sita, Gargi, and Maitreyi, and others who have actually outthought and many of the men, many of the rishis. They've contributed so much to that, and that's because they're manifestations of Shakti. You see, Shakti power is basically seen as feminine, and wisdom is also seen as feminine in India. So this transcendent wisdom, of course, goes beyond male and female. You can't assign it to gender anymore. It outstrips everything it runs, but it also transcends all dualities. It's beyond your pleasure and pain considerations, and it's beyond life and death. It transcends virtue and vice, which is a problem with the religionists, you see. They're having that. Oh, now I'm good, now I'm bad, my mind has good thoughts, my mind has bad thoughts, and they labor about that back and forth like a ping pong ball, going back and forth via these two paddles and these forces, you see. But the non-dualist, which is one of the beautiful gifts of Mother India, transcends those by meditating on the nature of, the non-dual nature of Brahman, and assigns it to him or herself too. You have to bring gender into it at some point. But the seeker will assign that to the self. That Brahman is also here in me as Atman. And what does it sound like to you that Jesus said? I and my Father are one, of course, one of his great non-dual statements. So he had that realization too. As I was saying last week, probably took a good 40 days, 40 nights. See? And we know how many days and nights Lord Buddha sat under the Bo tree 550 years before Christ to have that same realization, you see, that this pure mind is Buddha mind, you see it. So wherever you look, Sri Ramakrishna might have put it, I and my mother are one, you see, because he had this deep, deep love for Divine Mother reality, saw her everywhere and everything. So, a little preamble again to my topic, which I always try and give 10 or 15 minutes to warm you all up philosophically. We only meet once a week on Sundays, kind of trying to recapture Sunday back from the worldly, you see. and have an anchor, create an anchor for ourselves. In the rest of the week, we're out there in the ocean of Maya, as it were, subject to the eddies and tides and currents of the five elements and the five senses and the sense objects and karma and our own samskaras inside of our mind and tendencies of the individual, collective, humanity, the ancestors' influence, other nations. You go on and on citing all these things, and India will just will tell you, oh, you're talking about that queen of all four-letter words, see, Maya. Or if you want to take it into a more Buddhist context, you're talking about samsara, rounds of birth and death and ignorance. Never thinking about God even by accident, Sri Krishna said. So, again, warming up to the topic, what we went through last week, basically, we did take these four because they're the parikarmas, Remember them? I have it listed here, so I remember to tell you. Mitraha, Karunaha, Advaita, and Udasinaha. And you can see their English concomitants there. You should not hate any being. Neither should you covet the goods of other beings, the Upanishads say. In fact, it'd be better for you to renounce things than to attach to them or covet them. You'll feel much better, much lighter, no weight. Not only no weight in your life, but no baggage, karmic baggage when you leave this body, so that you can follow the path of Dharma inward. Sri Krishna calls that the sunlit path, and there's also the moonlit path. So he doesn't speak so much in terms of good and evil. He states pretty much to the Dharma. He does say that there are adharmic beings, but basically he said the yogis and the realized souls go by the way of the sunlit path, and the humans and ancestors go by the way of the moonlit path, this dark smoky path as compared to the path of light. So we're to think in that very ancient description of pathways that Sri Krishna looked inside and saw beings moving along two paths. What does it remind you of? Yes, the Pragbaras of Lord Kapila, who Sri Krishna, same person, Sri Krishna mentions in the Gita of all sages and seers, I am Kapila. You see. Of all luminaries, I am Kapila. So Lord Kapila had come forward with that same ideology about looking inside, meditating, and he saw a Pragbara, that is a stream of souls. One was going towards liberation, Koivalya, Pragbara, freedom, and one was going towards samsara, Pragbara. They're dams of souls. They get dammed up in one particular path and they can't move. See, like a river gets dammed up. It's a dam that's in the way. Okay. So, and souls are routed into this by their own inclinations. There's no God and devil doing it, you see, in Vedanta. There's no God that's going to help you get out of it, and there's no devil that's going to force you into it. This is your own doing. That's what is superior, we think, about the doctrine of karma over doctrines of destination and so forth. That you're responsible for your own self. Now, that would make sense if you knew that the Lord was in you as Atman, right? If perfection was in you and you fell afoul of it, then whose fault is it? You see, if there was a God and he or she or it put that perfection in you, if you wanted to go that far, then you could say, gee, I was given this gift and then I just covered it over and forgot it. I have to go back to he, she, or it and complain now? That, or is it my own fault, you see? So karma is actually, and trying to think of the word, inscrutable doctrine, see. You have to pay the piper every farthing for use of the body. So body, senses, objects, and all that, we know what the price is for them. It's death. It's wearing out the prana, wearing out the organs that you get into. And so you'll see the yogis drawing back in life. They don't spend, they accumulate merit. They don't spend prana energy, they accumulate merit. And that's called punya in Buddhism. And the opposite is papa. So you have these two paths shown or reflected all the time in all the darshanas and in the different religious traditions of the world as well. Coming to know the difference between good and bad is just the basic morality that any embodied soul must live by. See, if they want to eventually transcend karma, or come to know that there's such a thing as transcendence, because many people don't know about it yet. So India is that mother of all religions, subcontinent, you see, country and culture, that has given us all those darshanas I just mentioned. They've also given us the three levels of philosophy, which we're very weak in the West. Philosophy to us is a matter of argumentation, debate, and making money. It's not about proving truth. See, But in India, it's always been about proving the truth. Proving the existence of God, if you want to put it very blatantly, that God is existence, you see. And they don't really feel it needs to be proved, but they will give you handles, tools like dualism, qualified non-dualism, and non-dualism, Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita. And they'll tell you, graduate these. See, they're like stepping stones. And once you graduate to the non-dual level, you can come back to the dual, and you can go up and down the amber stairs of birth and death as many times as you want, like, say, Dalai Lama, who's lived 14 conscious lifetimes. And other souls, like Karmapa, who've lived at least as many. So there are souls that have mastered the birth, death, life process, and they've done it by eternal life, what Christ called eternal life, what Krishna's calling Sanatana Dharma, immortal Dharma. So we looked at those four, not hating, and that's one of the ankushalas of Buddhism, hating. It's one of the unwholesome roots. There are three very unwholesome roots, and hate is one of them. So this is put more in a positive way. It's the four parikarmas, the four ways to deal with different kinds of people. You don't hate the evil, or you don't hate those who you don't like or something, that you have a chemistry with. And you're friendly to those who are successful, and you're compassionate to those who are suffering, and you're indifferent to the evil. That's how Krishna puts it. You become indifferent to the evil. See, they're going their own karmic path, and they'll get their comeuppance, just like everyone else will, and in the right time. You might get a little anxious and impatient about that, but the thing about time is that everything happens in it continually, and until you can transcend it effectively, which is a very rare soul, that there's no way you can destroy anything. It's the one thing you need to know. Krishna puts that in the Gita to Arjuna in answer to his question. He says there are two things you ought to know. First, the Atman's indestructible in you. And that's why you can go to war, since he's a warrior. So you're fighting a righteous war. That's why you can go to war and not incur any sin by fighting, see, and killing. Because nothing can be killed, actually. You're just dispensing bodies. The souls leave them and take on more bodies. And so this is a cycle that's going on continually. And so he follows that teaching up. If you don't know the Atman, if you don't know this truth, then you should know this secondary truth. That's that everything that's born dies, and everything that dies gets born again. Now, where's the grief in that? Yes. See. So taking the longer view, and whether you look at it in terms of cycles, which is a good revelation to have, because most people don't even know they're on a cycle, you see. They're on a merry-go-round like happy little children, and they don't know that it's going to end, the ride's going to end, or that they'll get sick from eating cotton candy and getting on the merry-go-round. See. Trying to search for pleasure and shun pain. That's not going to work. So this dualism and this qualified non-dualism and this non-dualism are three steps that you graduate, you see. And when you come to a non-dual state, it's marvelous to see a soul in that state, like Sri Ramakrishna or Ramana Maharshi or other great souls we've heard of. They can reach deep inside of them, see their Atman, and commune with it. As easily, Holy Mother says, as you would see a fruit in the palm of your hand. Hasta Amalaka. I could sing you 13 verses on it. Hasta Amalaka Stotram it's called. This beautiful musical offering, sacred musical offering that explains to you how the Atman should be as clearly seen to you as you would see a fruit in the palm of your own hand. You pick it up. See? Yeah, sometimes you have to hide it away, you see, from the gaze of worldly people, depending on the situation. But Christ also said, what will avail you to gain a great light and then hide it under a bushel? See? You need to bring it out at times and show it. And you can do that at great risk, too, if you're powerful enough. Those beings who have reached a non-dual level, they can bring that light out and show it. It's not advisable for most people. But it's the saying, don't do this at home, kids. Don't go and shining your light everywhere. The hippies found out about that. You see, you have to be a very strong soul to do that, because there's going to be antagonistic people looking at you, people who do not like the light. Look at what happened to most of the great beings who came and tried to show their light, you see. They may even have known that birth and death are ultimately illusory and are going in cycles all the time. So they weren't attached to their bodies, but other people are attached to their bodies in their lifetimes. And sometimes for good reason, because they have karmas to work out. There are souls that are here right now working out some karma. They're not just ignorant people, totally unawares of what's going on. They have intuition, they have high intelligence, they are masters of lower knowledge. Various sets of people are here, and they just don't know all the dynamics yet and have not connected all the puzzle pieces. They're mensches, as we ought to put it that way, see, in Jewish jargon, Jewish speak. So very good people amongst us, and growing, as it were. But the Atman doesn't grow. See, it's never born and doesn't die. It doesn't decay. It's not subject to disease and illness and so forth. So in my tradition, you can never say, I'm coming down with a cold. See, you'd have to say, my body's coming down with a cold, because the I in you is the Atman. And if you don't know about the Atman, the I in you is the ego, and that's what you're worshipping. You're worshipping yourself, basically, but not your higher self. So that's why these 4 parikarmas are very important, you see. And so, at least you know, we went through 4 of these, you see. Now, we looked at this chart next, last week. We're reviewing this for those of you who are new, who weren't here last week. And in that chart, we were taking up these clarities of mind, these 4 clarities. Prasad is the word, you see. And prasad means not just food that's been sanctified, which is a very good thing, but also means everything up to the word khyati, which is clarity of mind. And clarity of mood, too. Now, we looked at that. Clarity of food, clarity of mood, clarity of mind. And then we ran out of time when we were looking at the clarity of spirit, you see. That's called adhyatma. Now, that's much like those 4-fold presence of God that we had last time. I reminded you that we looked at Adibhuta. We also looked at Adidayvata, the original divinity that's in you, Atman, you see, the soul with a capital S. That's another way in which God presents itself to you. And also comes as the Adi Yagya, the supreme sacrificer. Why Christ was crucified and Lord Buddha was poisoned, and on and on. Why they came here, knowing about their birthless and deathless nature, their Buddha nature, if you will, knowing that it was impeccable and perfect at all times, yet subjecting themselves to the sacrifice. See, that's Adi Yagya. On a very high level, all of us sacrifice, or should. That's part of the Gita's teaching. In fact, some say that is the main part of the Gita's teaching. Sri Ramakrishna says, main part of the Gita's teaching is what you say when you say Gita, 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 over and over again. Gita, 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 Gita. You put the accent on Tagi instead of Gita. Eventually, when you say it over again, and Tagi means renunciation. So he says, that's what the real meaning of the Gita, underlying is renunciation. Renounce it all. Give it up. Don't hold on to anything. Be free. See? Because your original nature is not immaterial, it's non-material. It's free of matter. It's free of nature, both its manifested and its unmanifested forms. That is, both in its solid object form and in its seed form. It's free of those things. And most beings will know that at the time of death. They will drop everything, they will let go of everything, and they'll see a great light and they'll float in it. They'll fly, as it were. And then it's just a matter of how long you can hold on to that light. If you've practiced holding on to that light in meditation while you're in the body, then you've developed some subtle muscles for inner life. See, fishermen hadn't done that yet. They were fortunate to have Jesus walk among them, and John the Baptist to come as a forerunner. Like Vivekananda came, and told us about Sri Ramakrishna, and other great twin souls have come like that. So this indifference, this friendliness, this freedom from hatred, and this compassion are enjoined upon us. Now, when we looked at this, we looked at these, we're reminded by these fourfold presence of God. We begin to look at Adi Yatma, and if you can see there, we called up the three conditions for true detachment. Now, as we went through here, clarity of food, we wanted to make sure that we knew about the defects in food, so we studied those. It's not just organic defects, but it's also mental defects that get into food. Like anyone preparing your food is in a bad mood, then that makes your food impure, and you eat it, and you take on the vibration of the person who prepared it for you. If you're in a bad mood when you prepare your food, then the food is poison when it enters your bloodstream. That's a rule of thumb, you see. Let's extend that teaching. If you're in a lackadaisical mood, a mindless mood, you see, an unmindful mood when you prepare your food, that energy will also get into you. So you have to be in a conscious state of mind. Yoga, it's called, basically. So you have to be a conscious state of mind whenever you even think of food, whenever you approach food, whenever you prepare food, whenever you eat food. That has to be across the board if you want nectar to get into your bloodstream rather than poison. Poison comes in many forms. Outright tamas, heaviness, weightiness that you feel in your body, in your spirit. Well, these are what they're talking about. Heaviness of mood, heaviness of mind, heaviness of food. Food has to be pretty much the foundation of everything, and you want to treat it reverently, which is not what we're doing in most cases here in the West. Fast food and preoccupation with eating meat and so forth is very unhealthy. We just chanted, the Atman inside of you is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity. So moderation is a key for a lot of this. It's not that it's bad to eat meat and it's good, you're better if you don't eat meat. It's that you ought to moderate everything. And if you do, then you can get into balance, sattva. And if you can get into sattva, then you can get into peace of mind. Sattva is a springboard to peace of mind. And peace of mind is practically enlightenment. See? It's just a very short jump from peace of mind to enlightenment. But you don't hold peace of mind long enough in your life, in your work, in your meditations to find that out. You see, gee, it's really been nice to have peace for days and days. You see, but it's not just peace of atmosphere. Clarity. It's clarity of inner moods too. You've got to watch your mind for shifts in consciousness. You see, because when those shifts happen, you first have to detect them, and then you have to shift with them. You see, the Buddhists say. When consciousness shifts like that, and you've already heard that consciousness doesn't move, then something's wrong, you see. Why is my mood shifting, you see? Why is my mind shifting? Why am I not continuing to think of the Dharma? Why am I not continuing to meditate on Shri Krishna, you see? And so forth and so on. Why am I falling out, you see? There are holes, gaps in my thinking consciousness. So I'm going to have to find those gaps and connect consciousness through them. So connections are supremely important to make. You don't just, throw up your hands and give up, and let the mind do what it wants. You can't leave the mind untended, especially not in this world. You have to be on vigil somewhat. So this is what this is about, really. When you see a system like this, it's nice to know there are defects in food, and I have to be careful because I don't want to, my mind doesn't want to get distracted by sorrow, despair, and so forth. And the four deadly traps are there: grief, guilt, depression, lack of self-worth. That's all nice information, thank you. It's the opposite of Dharma, so now I'm pretty much getting an idea of what Dharma and Adharma is, but what you really have to know is that this is a system for shoring yourself up against breaks in consciousness, against lapses of awareness, so that you can just stay like this all the time. You can sit like this for hours, because it took 40 days and 40 nights for Buddha, 49 probably, or 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness for Jesus to come to that kind of steadiness that Krishna is talking about all the way through the Gita. A yogi is a man, stiti pragnasya, steady wisdom, never wavers. Yadipo nivatastu ningati sopamashmritaha, yogino yatichitasya yunjatu yogam atmanaha. Like a candle in a windless place, the mind of the yogi stays unflickering, stable, unmoving, steeped in meditation upon the Atman, and completely saturated with yoga. If God is unmoving, then I must be unmoving in order to see God, right? If I'm moving, I can't see the unmoving. The only advantage moving provides me with is that I know there's something stationary I'm moving through, see? And this is the kind of thinking that you get, the 6 proofs of Purusha and so forth in Samkhya and in Yoga, basically is that if you're on a train in the middle, and there's a train moving faster than you and a train moving slower than you see, or if they're all moving at the same time, it looks like nobody's moving, right? Same phenomena happens on the highway when people are going past you and so forth. You can all of a sudden think, well, they're one person, you pass one person and you're just saying, well, they're moving backwards faster than I am. See, everything shifts all of a sudden, you see. So this stationary substratum, it's called. I mean, these are things to ponder for the mind. If dancing and singing isn't doing it for you, if meditating isn't doing it for you, and socializing isn't doing it for you, pleasure and pain is getting tiring, then why don't you put your mind on some of these precepts and think about them, because that will fuel your meditations. That will make your dancing and singing mean something, you see. Not just end up with a bunch of gyrations of the body and some wasted energy, you see, at the end, huffing and puffing. It'll make your asana mean something, when you can quit shifting around to dozens and dozens of different ones and sit like this for hours and get into balance. Have the self revealed to you this very day, this very moment if you can. This is what they're encouraging you to do, and by their example. The saviors, they're not saviors, they're exemplars really. Saviors are for people who need them. But these great souls have come to exemplify the truth of the Atman. It doesn't have to be proved, and doubt has no place. So all of these things are good. I got on the airplane to go to Oahu, to Honolulu last week. And once I got on, I was watching people, as I usually do. And I saw one person with a Kindle thing on, here, and he's reading a book about guilt. And then the man sitting in front of me after I got on the plane was here and was reading about grief. See? Now, if I had to look further, I'd probably somebody was reading about depression. See? But where they weren't reading about these 4 parikarmas and how to do away with them. Those books, and I was actually reading the Kindle books over his shoulder to see what they were saying about guilt. And on the page, there were like at least 5 times guilt was brought up. And a couple other sin, you see. I could just hear Sri Ramakrishna saying, quit reading that, you see. It's not healthy for a man to hear about sin and guilt. He should hear about his divine nature. See. Water the flowers, not the weeds. What do you think will happen if you water the weeds? So that's my latest experience with the 4 deadly traps, you see. If I could have talked to the people, I would have said, well, in my tradition, guilt is called a deadly trap. You don't want anything to do with it, nor grief. It might be natural to grieve if something horrible happens to you or a loved one and so forth, but get over it as quick as you can. because it can become a trap, see? And it'll suck you in, like Maya is so famous for doing. Samsara sucks you into cycles, you see. And where does your peace of mind and your peace of mood and your right discrimination around food and all of these things go when you're sucked down those kinds of traps? Well, here as an accompaniment, I put the 3 obstacles to do detachment. That is, seeking occult powers. See, there's such a thing as astadaha siddhis. There are 8 of them. And then there's something called the astabala siddhis. See? Some beings, even some teachers, get caught into the astabala siddhis. They like to try and levitate. They like to try and walk on water. They like to try and dominate over others. Those are called occult powers. See? 8 of them. In old times they noticed this, and the Buddhists have a form of it too. They're called riddhis and siddhis. But there's also these astadaha siddhaha. It's the 8 powers of God. So there's these 8 occult powers of the mind-ego complex, you see. And then there's these 8 higher powers. The 8 higher powers want you to transcend suffering. The greatest accomplishment you can have is to transcend suffering. In 3 ways: external, internal, and beyond. In the 3 worlds, you'll transcend the 3 types of sufferings. After that, it's all about studying the scriptures for Dharma, getting a good guru who can teach you this and stay with you through the path, accompany you, see, guide you, and turning your friends, your family, and other people around you into a spiritual sangha, like we've done here. See? There are groups out there gathering for all sorts of reasons, see, clubs. But Vedanta societies, sometimes they're called, you see, is what we're doing here. We want to come together around a pillar of truth, and we want to talk about the axioms of truth. And if we want to spend 3 hours on a Sunday, that's nothing, you see. King Dasaratha, back in the time of Sri Ram, his son, would start his meetings on Dharma at sundown. And everyone in the whole city would file into his hall, you see, the whole town, and they would talk about Dharma with the rishis and with visiting priests and so forth all night, and all of a sudden the sun would come up in the other window, you see, went down over here, came up over here, and they realized they'd been talking about Dharma all night, and they hadn't even realized the passing of time, see. So if we can just take 3 hours on a Sunday, that's nothing, you see. It's just getting our feet wet. And this is what we need to do, I think, as in our Western incarnation here. Who knows where we've come from previous to that? We'll have to find that out. But in our Western incarnation, this is what is needed for this society. Because you heard me mention, right, walking on water. Isn't that inventing a fleet of ships to go raid another country? See, floating in the air. We did that. We got airplanes. Even here on Earth, occult powers come through. Dominating over others. What Westerner with any good conscience doesn't slump when he hears about domination over other cultures? See, about not coveting and not hating. When you don't want to do it, but the powers that be in your government and so forth, that's what they're after. They're after the occult powers. So those are the occult powers manifesting in your very life, you see. So you have to take your consciousness away from those weeds and put them on the flowers of astadaha siddhaha. Siddhi. Yes, astadaha siddhi, it's called. Higher powers. See? And that's what yoga offers you. The first higher power yoga offers you is what? Prana, your own life force. And that's responsible for mood and mind and food. Food is running through prana all the time. It's running through water, it's running through air, it's running through earth. air means when you breathe, you get energy, don't you? That's prana that you're getting. It's not just air that's doing that, it's the prana in the air. And the food is made up of air, earth, fire, water, and ether, so you've got prana in the food. And if you eat the food and you're aware of the prana, then you get good mood and good mind, you see. Holy Mother used to say this all the time. She used to say, from pure food you get pure blood. From pure blood you get pure breath. From pure breath you get pure thoughts. And from pure thoughts you get pure mind, and pure mind is God. See? So God is just a few breaths away, a few morsels of food away, you see. A few intellectual thoughts away, you see. Oh, these people that say, too many words, you see. You'll never get realization through words. But, the Zen masters are some of the quietest people you know. And you know what they tell you? That if you can't express your realization through words, then you haven't had realization. So, there are words and there are words, you might say, you see. And there are powers and then there are powers, you see. And then there are cultures like America, and then there are cultures like the rishis of India, you see. We need examples. We need exemplars. Enough of saviors. If your saviors and hope is your only quality you're talking about, then you're practically lost already. If you have to rely on hope, and that's Swami Vivekananda's least favorite quality of them all was hope. He actually said so. What about strength? What about boldness? What about the absence of weakness that leads to hope? See, what about knowing that God dwells in you as certainly and as clearly and as intensely as any being? Because the ancestors, the angels, the gods, and so forth, do they know about their Atman? They have a much easier chance of realizing it if they did. But you, here on earth, in the physical body, you're hearing about your Atman. You can transcend ancestors and celestials and gods in one fell swoop. One fell swoop means one lifetime, if you will, and you dedicate yourself. So, 8 occult powers, the desire for heavenly existence, you see, right there, desire for heavenly existence, and personal lordship. If you can get over those things, then you might want to look at these more powerful facets of Adhyatma. That means spiritual attainment. Where is my spiritual attainment? Am I going to come to the end of my life and say I didn't know anything about spirituality? See? And freedom from afflictions. That's that transcendence of suffering I was talking about. And how about the end to transmigration? Maybe you hear about birth, life, and death, cycles, samsara. Say, well, I'm aware of that now, I'll be careful, you see. But what about transcendence of transmigratory cycles? How about just getting beyond that, birth, life, and death, called eternal life? See? So you're going to want to listen to the words of Sri Krishna, you see, in the Gita, and check out the immortal Dharma and so forth. See? If you can't say it, then sing it. Vasudeva sarvam, Vasudeva sarvam, ekameva dvaitayam, Vasudeva sarvam, Vasudeva sarvam, Vasudeva sarvam, Suridam sarva bhutanam, Vasudeva sarvam. Vasudeva is the name for Vishnu. Krishna takes that name. See? So sing to him. Ekameva dvaitayam. You are in everything. You are the one principle. Ekameva. See? Ekam eva. One. Indivisible. See? Permeating everything. And these are all words from the Gita. I took these phrases and turned them into this song. There are many of them. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Atmani Vishwadarshanam Manmai Mamupashrita Vasudeva Sarvam. You are everything, Lord. Vasudeva Sarvam. Sarva means everything. You are in everything. Then why aren't I seeing you? You see God face to face. He comes in form. She comes in form, Divine Mother. See, that's what Gandhi said about Sri Ramakrishna. When you see Sri Ramakrishna, you see God face to face. I was talking to a Swami of a different order the other day, and he said, "Oh, you worship Sri Ramakrishna? That man was God. That man was God," he said. And I thought to myself, is God? I like to think in the present tense. But 1800s, that's not so far away to see God in human form come again. See. So yes, you can sing about this as well as talk about it, and you should. Expose yourself to it. So in order to free yourself from transmigrations, then you would need, here it says, sampadana, and klesha and samsara vinashana. Vinashana means destruction. So you need to destroy these kleshas: ignorance, attachment, aversion, egotism, and clinging to life are the kleshas. Father of Yoga has listed them. Buddhists call it kilesha. So you have a little different list, you see. Ignorance, destroy your ignorance. You see, get knowledge. That's why I started off, the first words I spoke today when the camera went on and you all opened your ears and hopefully your hearts was, Nahi gnena sadrishyam bhavitramiha vidyate. Tat svayam yoga samsiddhaha kalenat mani vindate. Know, O seeker, that in all the three worlds there is no purifier like knowledge. So we're talking dharmic knowledge here. Knowledge has an uppercase representation. We don't hear enough of the Dharma. Were you raised with it as kids? In India they were, in old times, the rishis were raised on the Dharma every day. It wasn't just 3 hours on Sunday. See, it was every day they sat with their father, their mother, and the guru, or the preceptor, the Brahmin priest, or whatever, and their day would be filled with the Dharma. They were watering the flowers all the time, see. And so afflictions didn't come, see, free of afflictions. And transmigration stopped for them. They got off the wheel of birth and death. Even as recent as 550 years BC, Lord Buddha got off the wheel of birth and death and showed us the way, the sunlit path that Krishna was talking about millennia before Buddha did it, see. So these are tried and true, hard and fast spiritual facts. See? If you have any interest in your own soul and in the eternity of everything, then you would look into them. See, it's available to you. Now, let's see what else is available to us then. I brought this kind of on the tail of this, I brought this chart of the three dispositions of living beings. The quote there by Sri Krishna says, "The faith of embodied beings is in accordance with their natural disposition. Beings are of the nature of their faith. What their faith is, that, verily, they are." So if you have no faith, then that's what you are, a faithless person. And if your faith is middling, or if your faith is blind, or if your faith is strong, then that's what you are. You see, it's all predicated upon what you believe and how strong your faith is. Faith, the word is Shraddha. Took a couple young teenage girls to India, sitting with the Swami. I said to Swami, these young girls have spiritual potential. Can you give them spiritual names? he looked at one and he said, "You'll be Saraswati." Didn't even blink an eye. He said, "Here's your spiritual name, Saraswati, goddess of art and learning." She was happy. She said, looked at the other, "You'll be Shraddha," faith. And it was perfect. He didn't know a thing about them, but I knew the first one that he mentioned was actually very big on arts and learning. See, that was her thing, you see. And the other one was lacking in faith, see, was building faith. So he named her Shraddha, not because she had faith, because that's what she had to work on, see. But if somebody comes up and tells her, your name is Faith, then she might start thinking about it and start building it inside, you see. The opposite of faith would be doubt, you see. So Krishna has it spot on, as usual. Now here's just a couple selections out of the Gita that you can look at. There are three kinds of beings, basically, he says: slothful, restless, and balanced. That's called the three gunas: tamas, rajas, and sattva. It's a teaching that's peculiar and particular to Indian religion. You don't find it anywhere else in the world, that there is slothfulness in nature, like, say, one of those dammed up rivers, or let's say even better, a swamp. That's slothfulness in water, usually a swamp. So the guna of tamas is in that body of water. But if the river's flowing upstream, then the guna of restlessness is in it, you see. And in a high mountain peak, where the lake is still and deep and cool and free and pure, sattva is in it, you see. So the three gunas exist in nature. Well, that's just one side of the teaching. Now let's take it to the human being. The three gunas also exist in your mind. If you watch, and this is what meditation is good for, is to watch your mind sink into tamas. Or me, you see. Slothful, heedless, depressed. Let's go back, you see. Depressed, despair, sorrow, grief. I'm in a deadly trap. That's Thomas. That's Mr. Thomas's neighborhood. But Mr. Rajas' neighborhood, you see, that's different, you see. Mr. Rajas has energy. However, energy is a bit sporadic there, you see. Sometimes it goes toward the slothful, and it's dull energy, and sometimes it goes towards the frenetic and restless. Krishna says those kinds of people are born in the wombs of the restless in their next lifetime. If you develop a habit of rajas, work, you know what I mean? Not just 9 to 5, but 24/7. Then you're a rajasic being. You're enforcing the mental asana, or perspective, of restlessness in your mind, and you'll take it to the grave. When your body can't work anymore, your mind will still be running. It's a big problem, see? And that's not the end of the problem. You'll come back as a restless person in restless families. Whole cross-sections of cultures are based upon this fact. You could say, forget about whether rebirth is true or not. Just look at society. If the soul itself isn't actually what's being reborn, that is, the ego-mind mechanism, if there's no personality like some schools of Buddhism, there's no real actual personality that comes back again and again, there's still independent arising, the Buddhists call it. Praticca samutpata. Everything is coming up like waves off an ocean. They're just saying, millions of little waves on the surface of the ocean, right? You're trying to keep track of them. But how can you tell this one was the same wave that came up again, you see? Amongst those millions, where are the reincarnations, you see? So the Buddhists have a point, you say. But really, the real point is they're all made of water, see? And they're all part of the ocean, you see. Water's the point, not the wave. Formlessness is the point, not form. Name, form, time, space, and causality. That's the 5 elements of Maya. And Maya flummoxes human beings for lifetimes. They're going to run and put a name on it. You see, looking for a good shirt, found a good color. Oh, it fits, you see. Great, it's a good color. What do I see on it? This little tiny polo guy or something, you see. Like somebody had to just go and put their insignia on my shirt, right? Or their name, you see. Or some astronomer has to go up and invent, see a new view in the sky and put his name on that constellation. You see, it's so much ego nonsense. And he's gone in 50 years, and probably nobody will remember him. What's the point, you see? So, why not discard names and forms, transcend time and space, and neutralize causality? Causality is karma. See, I do an act, I get a return. You sow what you reap what you sow. Why not transcend that, those afflictions, you see? So Rajas has that problem in it. See, it's constantly driving people to, in competition, for instance, to get the hand up, you see, to better the last person. One-upmanship in everything going on. See. There's a healthy side to competition, but look what happened to football. And the people who are watching it in the stadium. You ever checked out that scene? That society? That club? There's an old song back in the 20s. Well, he's football crazy, completely off his head. It starts out, you see. That's breezy, you see. Breezy because he ate bad food and something's coming out the back, you see. They call him breezy. See, sitting eating hot dogs and beer and so forth and watching football. That's when Breezy took a notion to join the football club. That's the end of the song, last line. So, I love a good game of football as well as anyone. I was good at it in high school. I organized neighborhood teams to play football, you see. But then I grew out of it, you see. Get over it. Grown men playing with their balls, you see. That's really what it is. Different shapes, sizes. But it's sports, you see. Use it as a pastime, but get down to the meaning of your true self, your nature, you see, what's eternal, not what's changing all the time. Been there, done that, now on to higher climbs, you see. Breath of heights, the Chinese poet Tu Fu said, you see. Breathless air of heights. And he goes up into the mountain on pilgrimage, and he gets way above the cities, you see, now looks down in the valley from this mountain perch, see, and writes a poem, Breathless Air of Heights. See, beautiful, see, like going on pilgrimage, getting away from it all. And Buddha said the very same thing centuries later. He said the seer gets up in the mountains and looks down in the valley, and the humid, fog and smog and all that down in the valley, and he has compassion for all those souls laboring down there. Well, that labor is rajas, and they're constantly going through it in cycles. And those cycles are lasting for lifetimes. Whether, as I was saying, it's the actual soul that's coming back again, or whether it's just appearance of humans, what does it really matter? You can't deny that it's happening. So, then you have the sattvic being, you see. Well, there are some of the things we were just talking about. Their worship, their food, their sacrifice, adiyagya, their austerities, and their gifts, you see, right across the board. The tamasic person's worship is dull and fearful, and they worship the lower spirits. Pretas, bhutas are called. The rajasic being's worship is of the rakshas and the yakshas and rakshasas. These are Sanskrit words from old times. They're like the demigods and the titans and the demons, you see. They worship those kinds of beings. For force, for power, for strength, physically. And the sattvic being worships the gods. The good, the noble. See? Sattvic person's always attracted toward that. So if you're attracted to that in this lifetime, then probably sattva is predominant in you. You always looked for the good, for the noble. See? Krishna tells Arjuna, you have no worry in that case. Because Arjuna had asked him, what happens if I can't realize this great truth you're talking about? but I don't like the world anymore either. I'm just kind of caught in the middle, torn apart like a rain cloud, rent in half, see. And won't I just fall into a worse condition? And Krishna says, no, my child never comes to grief. See? You have the sattvic in you. You're a sattvic. So this is somebody wrote me a question on the Yoga Sutras yesterday on the email about auspicious birth. What is that birth, preferred birth the Buddhists talk about? And I said, it's that birth in which all auspicious markings attend you. Linga. See? Linga and alinga. If you have precious markings, auspicious markings in you, you see, then you'll know that lifetime is, you've prepared the way for yourself, you see, and you can get to that ocean of light without any problem. And you'll be dharmic on earth, you see. You'll be spreading the Dharma. You know, in the very last sloka of the Bhagavad Gita, what it says, the greatest beings are those who spread the Dharma amongst my children. They come to know the Dharma and then they hand it out to others. So that's the Lord's opinion. Those I love the most, you see. Because he knows that Dharma is going to lift them out of suffering, free of afflictions and all, you see. Get rid of tamas and rajas in them. They'll master the gunas. They'll even go beyond sattva. Because sattva is a gold chain. Swami Vivekananda said, this is an iron chain, you see, tamas. But sattva is a gold chain. You want to go beyond that too. Pleasure and pain. There's always a third way out, you see. So you get the point here. Didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but we already had the teaching on food. Tamasic people go for stale, impure, and overcooked food. Rajasic would go for sour, silent, pungent, too spicy, and Sattvic people would like pure, savory, and substantial food. And sacrifices and austerities and gifts. Live stream audience can look at this chart at the break and see these teachings. But basically they are taking into another context some of these great points of the immortal Dharma. That's why I bring it up. And specifically, this threefold austerity is very good. If you get to the sattvic level, where you worship the gods, your food is savory and pure, your sacrifices are motiveless. You just do that for the good of humanity. You don't want anything in return. You don't want to put your name on anything. You're motiveless. See, everyone likes motive, right? Money and things, but you lose your attraction to all that. And you do the threefold austerity, and your gifts are selfless and timely. This threefold austerity, star, you see, is here. The sattvic worship the gods, have reverence for the wise. Their acts are pure, they're upright, and they don't injure any being. Right? That's why we're just checking these off as we go down this chart with a teaching like that. What's the those are the austerities of the body, you see. What's the austerity of speech? Truthful speech, beneficial speech, inspiring speech, calming speech, and sacred recitations. Like nahi gnana sadrishyam pavitram iha vidyate. There's no great purifier greater than knowledge. You see, that's a sacred recitation. You memorize the scriptures, you put them to your mind, you meditate on them, and then you can share them with others. See? Share them with your friends. Collect them all. My teacher could recite the Bhagavad Gita, all 18 chapters, by memory in his 90s. I saw him doing it every day. See? So he had all of that already memorized a long time ago when he was in his 20s, you see. He became a monk, and then just recalled all of this wisdom. You think that you're just going back into your memory, but you're not. Your memory connects to subtle memory. Smriti Hetu, it's called. The cause of memory. There's a cause for your memory. And nobody ever thinks that deeply or that far. What is my memory, you see? It's just something that goes away when I get old and my brain doesn't work anymore. You're thinking of yourself as a brain, but you haven't found your own mind yet, you see. Brain and mind are different in my tradition. Mind is the kingdom of heaven within you, Christ said. Brain is just a noodle in your skull, you see, with a few redeeming qualities to it. Mind is vast, mind is eternal, mind is pure too, you see, as long as it doesn't fall into restlessness and darkness, you see, heaviness. So get a hold of your mind and find your causal memory. That's the memory of who you were in all your lifetimes, for instance. So that's the memory of who your, not just your ancestors were, but who the solar line that you came from is, the sun god, and so forth. All of those beings are way back in your memory, and you can trace yourself back to them. In an instant you can do that, you see, once you make those connections. And then you can be empowered, not with the occult powers, but with these divine powers of God's mind. The cosmic mind, you see, becomes yours. Your mind connects to the cosmic mind. And you quite often make your way through the problems of the collective mind, you see. There are many blockages in the collective mind, deeds that have been done in many lifetimes that have formed grantis, knots they're called in Sanskrit, psychological knots that people can't move through. They bring them back into their next lifetime and their body looks like they're knots, you see. Those are those auspicious markings we're talking about, or inauspicious markings as the case may be. You bring them back with you into your physical form. So Sri Ramakrishna could look at you if you walked up to him and say, "Oh, I see where you've been." Just by your features he could tell who you were in your past lifetimes and what your good qualities were and what your blockages were, just by how far apart your eyes were or how close together, how your nose was shaped, if your chin was cleft or pointed, or stubby, or what your ears looked like. Your whole spiritual physiognomy was, and all your lifetimes were written on your body, see? And he could read it. So if you were having problems, you'd say, yeah, that makes sense. It goes with the way you look, you see. Worldly people look, evil. They look bland. They look dull. They're being run ragged in rajas, you see, and falling into tamas. But the noble, good people, they look light, they look happy, you see, vivacious, they're full of energy, they have their prana moving. And even into their old age, they're like that, you see. They haven't run afoul of the cosmic process, they've mastered it. Or they are in the process of doing so. Give them a few more lifetimes to get rid of any more inauspicious markings they might be carrying with them, because they start in the mind and you'll see them in the body later. And evolution has it backwards. See, evolution is in Maya's hands, and she's made it look backwards. Consciousness started this whole thing out way deep inside of us, and then everything came out. It's not that matter had to happen first and then consciousness got into it and brain developed and intelligence had to visit it, and that's all ass backwards. We don't believe in evolution. It's a good way to explain the physical universe, but it doesn't explain the kingdoms of heaven inside of you that Christ talked about. Those aren't based on evolution of matter. That's based upon the eternity of consciousness, of your divine awareness, of your Atman, your Buddha nature. See, that transcends time, so time can't monkey with it, you see. And that's a good word to use. As if you're still thinking you were a monkey at one time. My teacher stood on the podium one day and said, "Oh, I see those people, Western scientists and so forth, they're trying to convince me that if I want to see my ancestors, I have to go to the zoo." But no, to see his ancestors, he looks back into the solar line, right back through Ramakrishna, which was his exemplar, right back to Rama and Krishna. From Ramakrishna to Ramakrishna, the two bookends of spiritual history in India. Rama, Krishna, and Ramakrishna, with thousands of years in between them, and great souls like Buddha and Jesus appearing there, you see, which to me are the same soul. there's not many avatars that come many times, or one avatar that comes once. There's one avatar that comes many times. They have the non-dual perspective. They know they're the Atman. They know their consciousness. And they know that you are one with them and they are one with you, you see. It's just they've realized that and we haven't yet, you see. So, sacred recitation is my favorite of them, as you can tell. If you look inside and you think, I found this out with music. So, professional cellist, right, in my early life. Symphonic and all that. So I'm playing, you see. Then all of a sudden my teacher takes the music away one day. Now play it. See? Couldn't do it. So I had to memorize it, you see. Went home, came back again, she took the music away. I could play it, you see. And so I had accomplished something. But I found out actually that the music was inside of me already before I even played it and before I memorized it. That the real music was way back, deeper than just outer memory. So it's much the same with the teachings. The Dharma is in you. These are the teachings you've heard from Jesus, from Buddha, from Ram and Krishna in other lifetimes. And if you hadn't heard them directly from them, you heard it from their disciples. And right now you're hearing it from one of his disciples. That is, Ramakrishna is my ideal, and my teacher was his wife's last living monastic disciple, you see. So it's coming as a transmission through this Guru Parampara. You see. Parampara pa pa pa, you see, it even sounds in Sanskrit like a fanfare of trumpets, you see. Find a teacher, have him transmit you the Dharma, and somewhere along the way you won't be thinking, this is new and fresh. You'll be thinking more like ecclesiastics who said, there's nothing new under the sun. The Guru just told me what I already know, you see. But I had somehow forgotten it, you see. The little birds of forgetfulness have pecked those memories away in my mind, you see. And I'd forgotten my causal memory and where everything's stored, you see. There's not just nature that gets stored in seeds, but intelligence also proceeds in seeds, in particles. They're so up in the air about, quantum physics and particles. But actually, what does particles tell you? That the object is empty. And the Buddhists already knew that 2,500 years ago. You're sitting on vibrating particles right now, people. The floor, the very sky, the earth itself is vibrating particles, changing at a billionth of a second. Now, what should that tell you? Or how should you conclude? Oh, I see, it's empty. I think Gita, 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 Gita. I think I should renounce it, you see. It's a mirage. It's illusory. It's ephemeral. It's transitory. It's unreal. It's not essential. So now I've done that, and then I start to remember these deeper particles, these deeper memories. You see, my past lifetimes. Krishna says that right in the Gita. I don't think there's probably any other scripture that comes out so blatantly and just declares reincarnation to you, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, because the Hindus have believed that for millennia. They're not still like spiritual babies, in a puerile state. Does reincarnation exist or not, man? See, they've been basing all their lifetimes on it. See, it's a cosmological fact. It's not an ultimate truth, because nothing ever gets born and nothing dies. We've already just told you that. So I'm not contradicting myself here. What's getting born is the mind, the ego, and the body. It's going through transmigration, you see, while the soul watches, you see. So all of you have watched your own birth and your own death and your many lifetimes. You've been the witness all along. Shak Sat Kar. You see, first you hear the truth, and then you roll it over in your mind. Then you realize it. And is that the end of it? Nidijasana? No, you have Shak Sat Kara. Shak Sat. Doesn't it sound like witness to you? And Kara, action? You're the witness of all action. They have Sanskrit words for these things, you see. We don't have them in English. You have to strew together 5 or 6 or 7 words to try and get the point across, but they just go in front of a teacher and they're using Sanskrit and they just say a word and everyone goes, or karma. You don't have to go through these big explications. So, Shaksatkara is the witness of all action. You've been the witness of every action you've ever taken. And as I said, no God and no devil were responsible for it. You are that God, you are that devil. So Vedanta comes through, you see, with a 1-2 punch. It puts you to the mat, right? And disarms you, see. So, went through this one. Now we need to take a break. Let's quickly look at the austerity of mind. These are the 3 austerities that come from sattvic beings. When they get sattvic, they're not happy with happiness. They're not pleased with pleasantries. They're not enjoying pleasure, you see. Well, there must be something beyond this nice balanced state, you see. It's getting old. So they do austerity, see, tapas it's called. So here's what they do. They silence their thoughts. They become gentle, non-violent. They control their mind. They get a fresh disposition and they attain selflessness. So not selfishness, selflessness. So this is the austerity of mind. And I could jump immediately into the next chart, but we are running out of time. We'll do it after the break. So here, let's take 15 minutes. Live streaming audience can look at these great teachings from the Gita, and all of us will have a little refreshment, that is, prasad, and come back to you with a fresh disposition of mind. And so here we will take our break. Thank you. Lord Buddha said, everything returns like the river. So we have returned after our short break, which was not a gap in consciousness, mind you. It was only a gap in time. So we are back as mindful as ever with these Dharmic teachings to deliver to you, hopefully transmit them straight into your hearts and minds. Of course, it's going to need a good receiver as well as a transmitter. So Sri Ramakrishna used to say, one bunch of men are typing out a telegraph message to a village a couple miles away, and on the other end they're not receiving. So they send a crew out, and they find out that the monkeys have broken the line that leads between the two villages, and so they send out a repair crew and fix that, and then they can talk back and forth. So he was using that in the same context of the student and the pupil, the guru and the disciple, if you will, and how there's this transmission going all the time, but the lines have to be connected, and that's actually pretty much the meaning between that famous peace chant, Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu. May we learn together in concrescence. May there not be any arguments between it. May we not find fault with each other. God knows there's millions of faults in both the guru and the disciple. Milarepa says in one of his songs, you see, mountains of faults you can find, but that's you finding them. You see, you're not finding the Buddha nature there in the teacher. The teacher needs to find the Buddha nature in you, and those two need to connect so that all these phenomenal things, you see, all these illusory things, all these non-essential things can be put aside, and you can get down to the business of learning together and realizing the Atman, or Buddha nature, in this very lifetime, we say. So, in that regard, let's look into Tantra. This is taking care of two of the entries on this storyboard here. Have to do with Daksha and Suchi. You see, Suchi is pure, to be pure, and Daksha means to be intelligent, or expert is this word. I don't think I could fit intelligence in that bubble, so I had to put expert. So much you can do with an 8x11, you see. But you can see this beautiful wheel here from the Konark temple, Sun Temple they call it in India, that I took, selected out of that temple and used it as this wheel of Dharma. For Tantra has this teaching that there are 7 qualifications, and Krishna, they fall in accord with many of Krishna's teachings in the 32 points of the immortal Dharma there. You can see here that a well-rounded tantric aspirant is a rare thing, and because it has to have these, he or she has to have these 7 main qualities. And they're all very telling, they're all very yogic, they're all very Vedantic. Again, the connections between these different darshanas of India, although they might have occurred at different periods of time, the seers all agreed with one another throughout that whole span. There was not a lot of argumentation going on or differences of opinion. They had proven these axioms by their own spiritual experience, nididhyasana. They'd come to conclusions based upon experiences that they've had, that they corroborated with one another. It was beautiful. That's why there was a Satya Yuga, a golden age period, and so forth. Even time couldn't really mess, or again, monkey, with Indian Dharma. It was sanat. It was eternal, immortal. There's nothing you can do about that. It won't die when cycles of time end in pralaya. Mahapralaya is another Sanskrit word. We don't really have an English equivalent, but it means end of long periods of cycles. 4,320,000,000 years is what we're thinking in, right? Scientifically, Big Bang to the end. But there is no beginning and end in Indian Dharma and in Indian thinking, in Indian cosmology, in Indian religion. It's just always cycling. It's just that at the end of these long cycles, there is a Mahapralaya. Sort of like, maybe rather like a Noah's Ark kind of thing, only there would be no ark and no animals and no earth, no water. Everything would go into abeyance, not just life as we know it here on earth, everything would go into abeyance. So they think in terms of that Maha Pralaya, the great dissolution. So that's more than 4,320,000,000 years long, you see, and more than just one of those big bangs in an end that lasts forever. This is going to come back again in another series of yugas, and again. There's a beautiful story about Hanuman and Ram. You see, Hanuman's the monkey god. Speaking of monkeys a lot today. He's a monkey god, and he loves Ram, you see. In the Ramayana, you might have read this beautiful story about Sri Ram and Sita. And so Hanuman loves him. So Ram tells him one day, I'm leaving the body. No big thing for these souls. And Hanuman, because it's a big thing for him, he says, well, take me with you. There's no doubt he'd give up his virile, Mahavir is his name, the great soul. So Ram says, no, you have to stay. It's not time for you to leave yet. You have work to do for me. You'll stay. And Hanuman's dejected, so Ram says, but I'll give you this signet ring off my finger. You see, take that. And this will signify our eternal connection together. You'll remember the teachings I gave you, that they are eternal, and that I am eternal, and that you are eternal. The whole thing is just eternal, sanatana. So he stretches out the ring to him, and Hanuman reaches out his hand, paw, to reach it, and drops. Before he can reach it, the ring drops and goes through the floorboards. And down under the house. So Hanuman flies, he's a son of the god of the wind, so he flies up, goes down underneath and finds the ring. When he gets there's a pile of signet rings. And this is India's way of telling us that these cycles go on forever and forever. There is no end to anything, and there was no beginning to it either. There just appears to be. And it's